Welcome to the Movie Pick, where my dad and his co-host do a deep dive on their favorite movies and all the things they love about them. Hope you enjoy this week's Movie Pick, recorded in Jet Studios, and give us a rating, but only if it's a good one.
All right, so welcome into the Movie Pick, where we are picking apart one of my favorite actors' movies, The Truman Show. And this is where we pick apart and dissect our favorite movies or just interesting movies. And so, June 5th, 1998, we get The Truman Show with a great tagline, especially if you know the synopsis of the movie. All the world's a stage. And even if this was not a Jim Carrey movie, which back in 98, when I was 14 years old, I was all in on watching any Jim Carrey movie that came out. But the synopsis of this is fantastic. An insurance salesman begins to suspect that his whole life is actually a reality TV show. You got me there. And you might say, what made you pick this movie? And this is one that I'm doing by myself. So what made me pick this? Love a good isolation movie. And I mean, your movies like your Castaways, 127 Hours, movies like that. Love a good isolation movie. And this is basically an isolation movie with people all around, because Jim Carrey or Truman is completely carrying the story, and it's all about him. And it's this movie that pulls off being creepy and wholesome all at the same time, like kind of a Twilight Zone episode of Leave It to Beaver, if it was like that. But first memories of this movie for me, this one was a theater movie. I think I saw every Jim Carrey movie starting with The Mask all the way until I think the number 23. I think I saw every one of them in theaters. Did not see Ace Ventura, did not see the number 23 in theaters, but everything in between, that was a theater movie for me. Because like I said, that was my guy when I was younger. I even named a dog Truman after this movie. One of the best dogs I've ever had. But IMDb rating, 8.2, which made it, I think, number 127 on the top 250 on IMDb. I mean, that's how highly ranked this movie is and how highly thought of this movie is. Rotten Tomatoes, 94%. Popcorn, 89%. And if you've listened to previous episodes, runtime of 102 minutes, and I felt like this was perfect. I can watch a 3-hour epic like Lord of the Rings. I also love when a movie gets the job done in under 2 hours, and this one does that. Now, some movies that came out the same year as this. This was the same year that the Yankees swept the Padres in a completely boring World Series. But at the box office was not boring. Listen to these. Number 5, Waterboy. Number 4, There's Something About Mary. Number 3, Saving Private Ryan. Number 2, Armageddon. Number 1, you might have guessed it, Titanic. So a stellar 98 list. Titanic, Armageddon, Saving Private Ryan, There's Something About Mary, and Waterboy. And this movie came in at number 13, which is high for the type of movie that it is. So it came in number 13, taking in $148 million on a $60 million budget, which brought up something interesting to me was who are the box office leaders of the 90s? And I'm talking about actors. So I looked this up. Sam Jackson was number 1 in the 90s. Number 2, Tom Hanks, and we'll fly through this. So it goes Sam Jackson, Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, Robin Williams, Bill Paxton. That was the shocker on the list. He would not be on anybody's. But you got to remember Titanic was in there. Whoopi, Goldberg, Julia Roberts, Tommy Lee Jones, Jeff Goldblum, Mel Gibson, Joe Pesci, and then our guy right here, Jim Carrey at number 12. But if you go per movie, like not just the top total, but if you go per movie, he's number 3 behind Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise. Because if you think about it, his 90s stardom did not start until 94. So half the decade, 90 through 93, were already done. And 94 through 99 is when he started making movies, because all he had done before that, he was on In Living Color, and he had been in some movies in the 80s. But as far as the 90s go, he didn't start his acting or movie acting until 94. So really impressive that he even ended up number 12. And again, if you go per movie, he's number 3. But going back to this movie, received 3 Academy Award nominations. So 3 Oscar noms, one for Peter Weir for Best Director, one for Ed Harris, and one for Andrew Niccol for the screenplay. It won 3 Golden Globes. One for Jim Carrey, which he also won the following year for Man on the Moon. Which another thing that's weird. So Jim Carrey nominated back-to-back years, won back-to-back years for Golden Globes for Best Actor. One for The Truman Show, one for Man on the Moon. Didn't even get an Oscar nom. So to me, it's weird that you win the Academy Award or win the Golden Globe, but don't even get nominated for the Academy Award. Sounds like he was hosed. Ed Harris was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, or won Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes. And then also Burkhard Dalwitz. Don't ask me to say that one again, for the score, but that was the composer. But just thought all that was really interesting and wanted to mention it all. The director of this movie, his name was Peter Weir. Some notable movies from me that I like of his and that I've seen of his: Witness, obviously this movie, Dead Poets Society, and then Master and Commander. Those are some of my favorite Peter Weir movies. And then the cast of this movie was phenomenal. It was, when you start thinking about like what makes this movie work, what makes this movie tick, why is this movie still relevant? Because it's almost 30 years old now. And if you watch Noah Emmerich as Lewis Coltrane as Marlin, does a phenomenal job. He's the one guy in the movie that you kind of somewhat think like maybe he is on Truman's side as far as the people in the dome. And there was a part in the script, which they left out, but there was a part in the script where Marlin does see Truman during his final escape and lets him go. Like kind of looks the other way or something to that effect. Not sure the full details, but that was something with Marlin. So they kind of hinted at that a little bit. I don't know how to say her name. Natasha McElhone is my guest, or McElhone as Sylvia as Lauren. I like, it's a world within worlds here. Holland Taylor as Truman's mom. And you might best know her, or I knew her as being the mom on 2.5 Dads, or 2.5 Men, sorry. And then Laura Linney playing Hannah Gill as Meryl, which I think, going back and watching this, I think Laura Linney kind of steals the show in a lot of scenes that she's in. And then you had Ed Harris as Christoph, which constantly makes me think, did he come up with that name on his own, or was that actually a born name for him, or was that his given name? And then we had some small parts that really did great. Paul Giamatti, love seeing him. I think his name was Simeon, his character's name was. And he shows up the next year, talking about Giamatti. Paul Giamatti shows up the next year in Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey in a much elevated part. Like in this movie, he had maybe 8 to 10 minutes screen time max. In Man on the Moon, he was like probably the 3rd or 4th lead. So he had a big part in it. And then we all know he became a great actor. Harry Shearer of Simpsons fame as Mike Michelson, the guy doing the interview with Christoph. And then Philip Baker Hall as one of the network execs, which anytime that guy can come up, if you like Seinfeld, go look up the name Philip Baker Hall. You'll know exactly who I'm talking about. But Jim Carrey, okay. Listen, I mean, this was like his first real step into dramatic acting. He had kind of towed the water a little bit with The Cable Guy. That was supposed to be kind of a dark comedy and kind of a lean for him into acting, like dramatic acting. But this was his first real step into it, where he wasn't fully in, because there's still some humor with Truman, but he was pretty far in. But listen to this 90s. Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, all in 94. And then he's a star. Like after Dumb and Dumber comes out, the guy's a star. Batman Forever, Ace Ventura 2 in 95, The Cable Guy in 96, Liar Liar in 97, which if you like a good runtime, I think that movie's like 80 something minutes long. The Truman Show. And he was also the narrator in Simon Birch. If you've never seen Simon Birch, put that on the list. Awesome movie. And then Man on the Moon in 99. And wanted to mention these two because they're kind of closing out, even though they're in the year 2000. Me, Myself, and Irene, which was a re-team up with the Farrelly brothers from Dumb and Dumber. And then The Grinch in 2000, which has become like one of the all-time Christmas classics. But some things that I love about this particular movie. The attention to detail is phenomenal. Like when you talk about what makes you like this movie, what makes you return to this movie. In one of the scenes, there's a vitamin D bottle. I think it's when Meryl does the Cocoa commercial. But in one of the scenes, there's a vitamin D bottle where he's wearing his matching pajamas. But it's showing that he needed vitamin D supplements because he was in a dome and because he would not be getting actual natural sunlight. And our body needs vitamin D. Our body needs sunlight. So he was given vitamin D supplements. Now, how they told him he needed it or why they told him, I don't know. But that was just such a cool touch, little small detail. Also, when his mom and Meryl are looking with him through the baby pictures, there's a great little nod to what he is, which there's a picture of him kind of behind, it looks like behind bars. And it might have been like a crib or something, but he's dressed as a clown. And so that's like obviously a take on the clown behind bars, which is what he is in this movie. He's just there to entertain people, but he's actually, kind of in a prison. I love the town. The town looks perfect. So if you were to be Kristoff and you're building this town, you're building this place to trap Truman in, they made it the most perfect place to want to live. And we're constantly reminded of that. Like the newspaper that voted Sea Haven the best place to live. I've actually been to the Truman House. I have a picture of myself in front of the Truman House just a year or two after this came out. Was super excited to visit it. And it really is like a beautiful town. I can't remember where it's actually at. It's like Sea something. It's not Sea Haven, but it's outside of Destin, Florida. Little things like Marlon in one of the scenes when Truman's freaking out and he comes to him and he like claps in the grocery store and Marlon's stocking the vending machines. Marlon stocks and restocks the same candy bars because it wasn't planned for Truman to come over there. So he's just trying to make it look like he has enough stuff to stock and trying to look busy. Again, those Peter Weir attention to details, just phenomenal. Truman's boat, the Santa Maria, was the name of the boat that Columbus used to sail the New World, which is the same type of thing as what Truman's doing here when he finally breaks out, when he finally leaves. He's sailing into his new world. Also on the boat, on the sail, there's a number 139. Now, this is really cool, especially if you're a Christian. This is really cool. Number 139 is a reference to Psalms 139, which is a meditation by King David on God's omniscience, which is his all-knowing, his omnipresence, ever-present, and the value of human life. And so if you look at that, go read that chapter. Obviously, I'm hoping that you're a Christian listener, but if you're not, either way, go listen to it and read that chapter, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a really cool chapter in the Bible that is very mirrors this movie very well. Some things I wondered: how do we feel about Kristoff? He's kind of this weird villain that seems to care about Truman. And has such a strange vibe, such a strange choice of hats also. And it's like he cares about Truman, but it feels more like an obsession with Truman rather than a caring about Truman. I think he feels like he knows what's best for him, but at the same time, he just wants to make sure that his show keeps going. And he's very interested in, especially in some of the deleted scenes, which that you can't count that as part of the story, but he was very interested in having the first on-air baby and then having a spin-off show of that. So again, Christoph, just extremely manipulative. I would put him in the villain role much more than the caring role. All right. Getting to some competitions. The best future TV star cameo. We had Holland Taylor as Truman's mom. She was the mom on 2.5 Men, like I mentioned earlier. Peter Krause as Truman's coworker. That guy was in Parenthood. He was in 6 Feet Under. He was on the show 911. And then Joel McKinnon Miller as one of the security guards. If you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, he's the guy that played Scully. The one that always surprises me is Scully, but the one that kind of went on to the biggest TV career to me, or almost obviously, is Peter Krause. I mean, Parenthood, 6 Feet Under, and 911, all huge shows. We loved Parenthood. I've not watched the other two, but we loved Parenthood. All right. Best actor in the Truman world, meaning in this world who would have gotten nominated for an Emmy if I was voting for Emmys. You had Holland Taylor as the mom. She knew how to throw that mom guilt on. Like when she says that I never blamed you for your father's death. You had Hannah Gill as Meryl. I felt like she was great at the commercials. I'm not sure on her actual acting, which was, when you think about it, superb acting by Laura Linney. Like, Laura Linney had to go into this, which all of these did, had to go into this acting like an actor. And that to me would be one of the hardest things to do. And Meryl was one of the creepiest characters in the whole thing. She kept this smile, this awkwardness, especially the scene when they're, I keep referencing it, but the scene when they were kind of getting into it, and Truman had taken her out and wanted to escape, and they get stopped by the nuclear plant, going off. Whenever Truman wanted to escape then, and they come back, and she just want to talk about Coco. And she's trying to do her Coco commercial while they're having a serious conversation. Again, not the time, Meryl. I think you're really giving it away at that point. And then Louis Coltrane as Marlon. Great job by Noah Emmerich. But he felt very believable. So I felt like that was just an actor acting. He did a great job. And he brought out all the real emotional moments with Truman. And then one shout out for this guy. Got to give a nod to our doctor that performs the fake surgery. I love that scene when he just takes out the scalpel and you have no idea what's about to happen there. And he's, after it's over, he's just like, I'll just let somebody else tidy up here. But the real winner in this one, to me, best actor in the Truman world, has to go to Noah Emmerich as Louis Coltrane as Marlon. Like, that guy does great. Again, nobody can beat Meryl with those commercials, though. Worst actor. Did have to mention this, though. The worst actor, the guy that really blew it. The police officer at the barricade, the one that says, "You're welcome, Truman." Like, come on, man. Think for just a second. Think for just a second. All right. Best scene, or not best scene in the movie, best saying in the movie, best Truman saying, or favorite Truman saying. Because I loved his little cheesy one-liners. And again, very like down to earth, almost going back to the 50s and 60s, Leave It to Beaver type of living. That's the whole kit and caboodle. That's the whole ball of wax. And then, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I have to give it to, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And I'll tell you why. That was actually my senior quote in my yearbook. I can't not pick that as my favorite quote. So in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night wins for me, hands down, not even a competition. Now, favorite commercial. Was it The Chef's Pal by Meryl? Was it The Cocoa by Meryl? Was it The Macaroni by Meryl? Or was it, I can't remember the name of it, but The Lawnmower by Meryl? And I have to go with The Cocoa as my favorite commercial. And again, little things in this movie that separated Marlon drinking the beer and saying, now that's a beer. It's the same beer that they have in the bar. It goes to all those scenes where it's showing the people watching the show. Same beer. So again, just they built this whole world, a lot like how Tarantino does when he makes movies, but Peter Weir built this whole world around Truman where, everything in the dome was for sale, like Christoph said. And then you see fans of the show wearing some of the ugliest sweaters and shirts like Truman wear. Even though he does wear a Donegal brown tweed suit in one part of it. And I have one like that. So I like that suit. But best scene. I love the intro to the world. Opening straight into Christoph. No opening credits. Like it goes into like the fake credits. Very Christopher Nolan-esque. Like Nolan skips credits and just goes straight into the movie. So opening straight into Christoph, talking about Truman's world and seeing Truman talk in the mirror about how the survivors should eat his love handles. Love that. It just sets us up with, this isn't going to be a hilarious movie, but it is going to have some of that Jim Carrey quirkiness to it. The date with Sylvia is obviously great. And in that one scene stays at the heart of the movie. I mean, it's the reason why Truman is just like tortured and buying these magazines and trying to build this picture of this woman that he's still in love with from just one night. And so again, the date with Sylvia, her being taken and then him getting a real glimpse that this is a fake world. Like, I mean, I know there was the Christmas scene where it shows the guy like breaking out, but this was like the first a little bit older Truman getting a glimpse that maybe this is a fake world, or first time that they let us know that. I love the scene when the radio picks him up while he's driving and like is saying all of his turns, saying where he's at, and he decides not to go to work and just sit there and people watch. And again, one thing I wish they would have left in, I watched a deleted scene of this. There was a deleted scene of Christoph talking to those people and saying, just keep doing your parts, stay in character. Keep doing your parts, stay in character. But that's when he almost gets hit by the bus and starts feeling like he can control the world. He sticks his hands out and like stops traffic. And that's the same scene where he sees the crew behind the elevator doors, where he tries to go up the elevator and the doors open up and it's just people sitting back there. I love the freak out on Meryl when he's sitting there in the driveway predicting who will walk by, who's, going to drive by out of Burbank. That whole scene of the two of them in the car, to me, both of them are like going 100 miles an hour and both of them are acting their tails off. And it was just phenomenal. Great scene. And then obviously the final breakout and the face off with Christoph when he's about to walk out. And Truman, he'd already had his theories confirmed, but he got to ask some questions. He got to ask like, why am I here? Who is this? Who am I? Who are you? And, interesting thing about that, Ed Harris, Jim Carrey never met on set. All of their stuff was filmed separately. I think Jim Carrey was already done before Ed Harris even came in. Hate to ruin the movie magic for you. But that's just kind of how it works sometimes. So my favorite scene though, and it could change by the day because I love the freakouts. I love it's almost a tie for number one, which is the scene when the radio picks him up and he turns, like all that whole thing in the elevator. And then the freak out on Meryl. Love both of those scenes. And again, it's Jim Carrey showing, hey, I can act. I'm not just Ace Ventura. I'm not just Lloyd Christmas. All right. Getting to it here. Just a few final thoughts before we get to Mount Rushmore. When do we think that Truman figured out he was in a fake world? Because he had to know when he does the astronaut routine in the mirror and he winks at the camera or winks at the mirror and says, "That one's for free," which to me would mean he figured it out when his dad showed up. And that's a big theory, is that confirmed it for him that Marlon was in on it. So whenever it shows him crying, there's a theory out there that he's crying not because his dad just showed up, but because he just figured out Marlon was in on it too. Probably the one person at this point he thought he might could trust. And interesting thing on that, during that scene when they're sitting there talking and they talk about Marlon being gone for a month, that whole part was probably written in just so the actor Lois Coltrane could take a month off when he was a kid. Just thought that was neat. But another theory, now this is really cool, and if you go back and you watch it, one theory is he figured it out before the movie even starts. And when it shows him gardening, when he's like bent down in that weird position, and that's when she shows him the peeler. But when it shows him at 9 minutes that he was working on the yard, that right then he was working on his Shawshank Redemption tunnel, because the gnome is in the background. So if you look at that gnome in the background, and then you look at when Marlon comes up through the tunnel when they're looking for Truman, the gnome is also in there in the background. So it's in that same spot. And so there's a theory out there that he already knew, because when you think about it, he escapes in one night, obviously, but it would have been really hard for him to dig that tunnel in one evening. So he may have started digging it long before. So it may have been just like Tim Robbins in Shawshank. He was working on this for a little while before it gets to the night that he escapes. Or he may have been just setting it up just in case his theory was proven right. And then it was proven right the night when his dad showed up. What I consider the greatest accomplishment of this movie is that there's no answer to the ending. Truman leaves. Truman walks through the door. I think the brilliance of this movie is not showing him on the other side of that door. Because if you could imagine what would life look like, how weird would life look if you've been trapped in this dome for 30 plus years at this point, or right at 30 years. If you've been trapped in that dome, all of a sudden you walk out. Hopefully somebody was hooking him up with some sunscreen really quick. But he walks out, and all of a sudden he's in this whole new world. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't have a house. He is starting over. Now, Sylvia's obviously running down the stairs, which gives us a hint that she's going to meet him. And I do think that they lived happily ever after. But again, from Truman's perspective, think about it for a second. How crazy would this whole thing be? And what happened, I know the network exec, our guy Philip Baker Hall, just told him to cut the cord or cut the station. But I mean, this is the biggest show in the world that is just all of a sudden done. I mean, this would have been like Jordan retiring the first time, where it's just like, whoa, pulled the rug out from under me. But just thought all the aftermath of that, I think not would have made a good sequel, but would have almost made a good book, or just like an epilogue to see what happened. Now, if you could have guessed where we're going with this is a Jim Carrey 1990s Mount Rushmore, because his movies are way too near and dear to my heart to pick 4 of all time. So I have to go with just the 90s. So again, every one of them that I listed earlier would be on the honorable mentions, except for Simon Birch, and only because he's just the narrator. Like he's maybe in the movie for 10 minutes. It was a cameo. But my final 4 would almost, Dumb and Dumber's there no matter what. No matter what list you're making, Dumb and Dumber is in my Mount Rushmore for Jim Carrey. Ace Ventura's in my Rushmore for Jim Carrey. It was the movie that I saw. I remember I saw the first one, and I think I watched it like 3 or 4 times the weekend that we rented it, because I was like, I can't get enough of this. Like, I don't know who this guy is, but this guy's hilarious. I knew his face from A Living Color, and that's all I knew. So Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, both in there. The Mask would not make it in. It holds a special spot for me because I remember that was the first one that I saw in theaters. And also me and my mom went to see it. And I remember that day, like stuff like that sticks out to me. I remember her buying me like a Mask magazine that had all this stuff in it about the movie. That's when, each movie was like a bigger deal back then. But so Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber are in. Um, I want to put Liar Liar in there, and I probably would. I mean, the competition's so tough. I'm having to leave out the Cable Guy, but I love the Cable Guy. I think it's way underrated and has gotten appreciated more over time. And then, yep, okay. So Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, the Cable Guy, and Truman Show. That would be my 90s Jim Carrey Mount Rushmore. Does not take anything away from Liar Liar. I might change my mind tomorrow. Does not take anything away from Man on the Moon. The movie's phenomenal. And the transformation he did as an actor to be Andy Kaufman in that movie was just phenomenal. But I'm having to stick with Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, Cable Guy, Truman Show. And to wrap this up, just in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you for listening.
Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to bump us up in the algorithms. You can send my dad any suggestions of movies you'd like for him to cover at themoviepick@aol.com. Thank you for listening.